read a second time, and I call the honourable member for Dunkley.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The member for Herbert just ended his speech with the line, "We must walk together as one," and I agree with him. I absolutely agree with him. We must walk together as one. And while there are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in today's Australia who have had magnificent lives and succeeded and are role models, and the member for Herbert's wife, I'm sure, is absolutely one of those people, the truth is, as a country, we haven't walked as one. We haven't walked as one since 1788. And we surely haven't walked as one since the Constitution was adopted in 1901 and didn't recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the First Nations people of this country, and in fact didn't recognise them as people. The member for Herbert's wife's ancestors, not that far ago, weren't recognised by our Constitution and Australian governments as people. So when we ask why are we having this debate in the first place, and the member for Herbert says because we need to do better, because we need concrete outcomes on the ground, I agree with him. We need to do better because the unfortunate and damaging and distressing history of our country is that our ancestors did very badly at the start, so damagingly badly, and governments over the years, some with bad intention, I would say, bad attitude about race, others with the best of intention, haven't done well enough. They haven't. And where I part with the member for Herbert, and the Leader of the Opposition and the National Party, is the conclusion that the Voice won't do anything to fix that. It is inexplicable that we could, in this chamber, stand here, anyone, and say we need to do better, more needs to be done, but we don't want to do it differently. And we know that one of the problems that has existed in this country for 200 years is that non-Indigenous people have done things to Indigenous people, not with them. That the policies that have been introduced from stolen generations onwards have been done by non-Indigenous Australians to Indigenous Australians, not with them. And most of the time, pretty close to all of the time, not even having consulted them. So when people talk in this chamber about horrific circumstances that some of our First Nations people live in and children experience and communities grapple with, they should acknowledge that that is not because First Nations people are inherently alcoholics or don't love their children or don't know how to look after their children or don't want to live in secure accommodation. It's because for a very long time we, those of us who aren't Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, have said this is how you should live your life, or this is how you should address the problems in your community. And now, in 2023, we have an opportunity to change that. To say that we might not be the people that committed the wrongs, that wrote the Constitution that ignored 60,000 odd years of civilisation. That wasn't us. But we're going to be the people that address it. And the voice might not fix the situation of the young boy that the member for Herbert was talking about immediately. But how can you deny that making sure that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people get to play a role in decisions that are made, in policies that are developed, that impact them directly, couldn't be better than what we've got now? This is not a political plaything. This is not emotional blackmail from the Albanese government. This is not the Albanese government or Labor's voice. This is the culmination of a decade of consultation, of so many processes for Aboriginal people have designed themselves, have participated in themselves, have produced one of the most beautiful pieces of writing that we will see in modern Australia in the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and have said, we ask for voice, treaty and truth, and we ask you to walk with us to get there. This is not emotional blackmail on those on the other side or any Australian to say why you should vote for the voice. It is just a clear and simple entreaty to say, be part of a new chapter in Australia's history where we aren't divided on race, where we don't have to every year hand down a Closing the Gap report that shows that First Nations people struggle under socio-economic conditions that are far worse than the rest of the community. Be part of a once-in-a-generation opportunity to say we are bigger and we are better than that, and so can our future be. I thought I was going to come in here a bit angry about some of the spurious arguments that have been put forward in this place, which is supposed to be a place of fact and debate, against the voice. But I can't actually find it in myself at the moment to be angry as much as just so deeply disappointed. Disappointed on behalf of my Indigenous friends who've dedicated their lives to making their lives of their community better. Disappointed on behalf of two women who work in my electorate of Dunkley, Corinda Taylor and Deb Mellett, for example. Two smart, hard-working, fierce, take no rubbish, take no step backwards women who run the Indigenous Gathering Place, Deb Mellett, and the CEO of First People's Health and Welfare, Corinda Taylor, who, if anyone met these two women, would say, that's who I want my daughter to grow up to be. Whether they be black or white or Asian, whatever their background is, they would look at these two women and say they possess all the characteristics of love and compassion and strength and a dedication to others that I want my children to possess. But they also have to fight every day for their community. And they should be heard. They don't want to be a parliamentarian, either of them. Although Corinda, I think, should be. They don't want to be in Parliament. They want to be with and for their community, but they want their knowledge and the knowledge that they have inherited from generations and generations and generations of First Nations people to be heard when governments and politicians are making decisions about their lives and the lives of their children and grandchildren. And that is not too much to ask. Put aside the legal sophistry about proposed section 129, because as I've said in this place before, the overwhelming majority view of legal experts is that that section is properly crafted and will adorn our Constitution, and that the ridiculous arguments about gumming up Parliament and ending democracy as we know it are just that, ridiculous. Do what the member for Herbert said and know your facts. Do your research. Put aside the ridiculous arguments about not enough information about the voice and the far-flung suggestions about the consequences of section 129, and just look deep into your heart about which side of history do you want to be on. Which side of history do you want to be on? I want to be on the side of history that says, as a country, we want to move forward where we honour our First Nations people and we make sure that no government ever again can dismantle the mechanisms for them having a role in issues that affect them. And I tell you what, a lot of good people do. A lot of good people want to be on that side of history. I just want to, in conclusion, say how proud I am of the Criminal Bar Association in Victoria, of which I used to be a member before I got elected to this parliament. And Dave Hallows SC, the chair, who's an old and dear friend of mine, but who put out this statement. The Victorian Criminal Bar Association supports the proposal to amend the Australian Constitution to recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders as the first peoples of Australia by the establishment of the voice. As the Uluru Statement from the Heart recognised, proportionally, we are the most incarcerated people on the planet. We are not an innately criminal people. Our children are alienated from their families at unprecedented rates. This cannot be because we have no love for them. And our youth languish in detention in obscene numbers. They should be our hope for the future. The unacceptable overrepresentation, Mr Hallows goes on to say, of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in custody persists, notwithstanding that more than 30 years have passed since the landmark final report of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody. That report examined many ways in which our criminal justice system failed to deal justly with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander persons. It also examined the disadvantages that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander persons confronted, disadvantages that frequently continue to inform the prevailing circumstances when First Nations persons come before our criminal courts. Whilst criminal justice primarily falls within the province of state legislatures, it does not do so exclusively. Moreover, the Commonwealth has wide scope to make laws on matters relating to or which affect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander persons. The Voice would provide a mechanism by which First Nations persons could communicate their views on such matters. The Criminal Bar Association of Victoria, whose membership consists of barristers who prosecute criminal cases, barristers who defend persons charged with criminal offences, and barristers who do both, considers that mechanism to be a fair and proportionate measure which has the very real potential to redress injustices that are so often seen by those of us who practice in criminal law. To Dave Hallows SC and all the members of the Criminal Bar in Victoria, I acknowledge your support for our brothers and sisters who are Indigenous Australians, and for those of us who aren't Indigenous Australians, who want to take up the generous offer, the generous request of the Uluru Statement from the Heart and say, we want to walk with you and we want to walk forward into a country where we're walking beside each other as one and equal. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.